All right, guys, so this might surprise you a little bit. It certainly surprised me. So Brian Kilmeade is talking to, what's this guy, Sean Duffy, is that his name? Something like that. I think he used to be an elected Republican, and now he's a media guy on Fox. So they're talking about, Republicans and Democrats here in the upcoming election. And Brian Kilmeade makes an interesting concession here that I honestly didn't think he would be able to wrap his mind around. I thought this was over his head because I honestly don't think he's that bright. But let's hear him out, and then we'll break it down.
We have the president talking about crime today. And so I wonder, did he pull this issue?
Yeah.
And now he wants to come out and talk about it because Joe Biden and Democrats haven't done anything on crime. They've actually, worked on defunding the police.
Okay, I have to stop here. No, they didn't. Are there left-wing groups and left-wing politicians in individual states that may, in one way or another, have worked on quote-unquote defund the police? Yeah, definitely. There's people trying to create a reaction team that is more social workers and unarmed people to respond to like mental illness breakdowns, right? Like there is a movement to do that. There are some people who do that. They are at the state and local level. There is only one politician, one, that I know of who actually ran on defund the police. That was Cori Bush. Cori Bush represents Ferguson, Missouri, where there was a famous police killing and there was a massive movement in the streets. And so she is representing the interests of that very specific district, and she ran on defund the police, and she believes in defund the police. And she won, right? Now, national level Democrats, are they running on defund the police? Of course not. Maybe you could point to a handful, 5 or fewer, who have said it at any point or believe in it. But even in terms of proposing legislation to vote on that, or any semblance of that, I've never seen anything to that effect. In fact, even people like AOC voted to increase police security after January 6th. So it's sort of a hack attack. They took a slogan that's used by activists and painted with a broad brush about the entire Democratic Party. And by the way, they don't engage honestly with the slogan. Now, by the way, I don't support the slogan. I actually think it's kind of stupid. Sorry if that offends anybody. But they don't even engage with the argument that is made by the defund the police crowd. Because again, when you tell them to get more specific, some of them do say, no, I generally mean police abolition. And I think that's the extremist view. But most of the people who say defund the police do say, no, I just want like the police budget's cut and that money to go towards social workers and things like that. Anyway, I digress. But to rope Joe Biden into this criticism is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Joe Biden is the crime bill guy. This is the guy who co-wrote the 1994 crime bill, which locked up way too many people. He's way too tough on crime. He has been his whole career. He's been a law and order Democrat his entire career. So for this guy to be like, oh, did Biden read some polls here? Like, what's he doing? His party believes in defund the police. Joe Biden has never wavered a centimeter on this thing. By the way, I wish he has. I wish he has come out in favor of freeing nonviolent drug offenders and legalizing marijuana. Unfortunately, he hasn't done anything to that effect. I wish he would, right? But in terms of being tough on crime, he's been consistent in his tough on crime stance his entire career. So the criticism is just not accurate. But these guys don't care. It's just like they go to their book of talking points, repeat the stuff like, what's it called, NPCs, and it lands with their boomer-ass audience that doesn't know the specifics.
Party that's funded and voted for these woke DAs, they are the problem with crime in America.
Well, there's 3 things the Democratic Party seems to be polling well on. The coronavirus still, which is inexplicable. Abortion.
By the way, the whole coronavirus, like, oh, Democrats are polling well on the coronavirus. I mean, I guess maybe because Biden did the free tests, right? Did free testing, but they just stopped that, actually. I guess because you can get a free vaccine basically anywhere in the country. Maybe that's why they're polling well. But in terms of like, they're not, the argument usually from the right is these guys are in favor of lockdowns and shutdowns, and they're just not. Like, Biden is not in favor of that. He's never been in favor of that. He's never implemented any of that. So, in a weird way, Fox News should be able to give credit to Biden on this because he's kind of embraced what is generally viewed as the right-wing approach in America, which is hands off, let her rip. That's kind of what Biden's done. So, you should support that because that's the policy position you support. So if Democrats, insofar as Democrats are polling well on COVID, it's probably just because they did the free testing and widespread availability of the vaccine. But outside of that, they've done nothing. And by the way, COVID is an issue now. even though there's still a decent number of people dying, COVID is ranked as very low on the priorities list. Why? Honestly, I think it's largely because at this point, the vaccine's been free and widely available for so long that people feel like if you get COVID and you die and you weren't vaccinated, whose fault is that really, right? Like, you've had every opportunity now at this late date. If you want to go that path, okay, but that's on you, dog. So it polls very low in terms of how much people care about it.
Because they are pro-choice, and a lot of the zero tolerance when it comes to these states has a lot of people freaked out. I think the 15 weeks seems to be, even if you're the most pro-life person, your neighbor probably isn't. So how do you govern? So I think those are the issues. Where they
that was the interesting concession. Let's run that back a little bit.
Abortion, because they are pro-choice, and a lot of the zero tolerance when it comes to these states has a lot of people freaked out. I think the 15 weeks seems to be, even if you're the most pro-life person, your neighbor probably isn't. So how do you govern? So I think those are the issues. Where they're polling really...
That is quite an admission. That is quite an admission. And by the way, that is not an admission I hear almost at all from Republicans. You know, a lot of the online right-wing influencers, what a stupid word, have tried to make the argument. I'm thinking of Michael Knowles and Charlie Kirk and people like that. They've tried to make the argument like, no. Actually, our position is really popular, bro. I don't even know what you're talking about. When people understand our position in its entirety and the left position in its entirety, we win that hands down. Here's Brian Kilmeade saying, look, this zero-tolerance approach on abortion is scaring a lot of people. And, you know, even if you're pro-life, your neighbor probably isn't as pro-life as you are. So, and then he says like 15 weeks is sort of a good compromise. By the way, a lot of European countries, yeah, they do have a line around there. But understand something, guys. Just like in the U.S. here, the overwhelming majority of abortions happen very early in the pregnancy. Very early. I mean, I used to know off the top of my head from the Guttmacher Institute the statistics, but it's something like 98% or 95% happen before the 20-week or 23-week mark. So you're really talking like pre-viability. And it's still, you know, it's like 80% that happen before like the 12-week mark or something like that. I mean, the numbers are astonishing. So even if you have like a 15-week rule where that's the cutoff, you know, there's going to be very few cases that go beyond that. And by the way, in many instances, the cases that do go beyond that, when are you dealing with, you know, rape or the life of the mother is in danger? And in those instances, I mean, you have the exceptions and they should exist. So here's Brian Kilmeade. I almost think he's sort of outing himself a little bit. To be fair, he's saying strategically this is hurting you, but I think he might even be outing himself a little bit as like, he's not with the super hard pro-lifers. He's not with the people who say no exceptions for rape or incest. There's the Republican candidate running for governor against Gretchen Whitmer said she's not in favor of the exceptions for rape and incest. There's been a number of Republican politicians and candidates who are like no exceptions at all. And so then you hear these nightmare scenarios where the woman in Louisiana is having a skull-less fetus, and they're like, no, we're going to force you to carry it to term. And she had to go to a different state to get an abortion. Or the 10-year-old rape victim, what was it, in Ohio, where the right acted like the story's fake news, and then it came out they arrested the guy, and it wasn't fake news. 10-year-old rape victim couldn't get an abortion. You have the story, where was it, coming out of Florida, where they said, you're not mature enough to make the decision to have an abortion. And it's like, well, hold on. But you're saying they are mature enough to raise the baby? What? So all these stories are terrifying people, rightly so. And they see the direction, the public sees the direction that the red states are going if you leave it to the Republican politicians in their respective states. And there's a backlash, which is why even in Kansas, you know, when the voters got to directly address it, they went in the pro-choice direction. So what's quite an admission here from Brian Stelter. Like, hey man, Republicans are going too far on this issue. Because you never, ever hear that in right-wing media. Right-wing media is the defense squad. Right-wing media they're the propaganda arm. So wherever their politicians go, they usually follow like little puppy dogs, and they're willing to make the counter arguments. Here, it ain't happening. Here he's like, I don't know about this one, son. All right, let's see what else he says. I'm sure now he pivots to going after Democrats.
Low is on inflation, on the economy, and on crime, especially.
Okay. On inflation, it's gotten a little better recently. It's still an issue. I'll grant it's still an issue, but it has gotten a little better recently. But look, a lot of it is because the Fed is basically inducing a recession. And one of the ways to get inflation under control is to spike the unemployment rate. And so they're basically trying to get to 6% unemployment, and they think that'll get inflation under control. But they're sort of admitting capitalism relies on an underclass that's just totally fucked. And so he talks about inflation, he talks about the economy. Well, there are some criticisms there that are legitimate, and some aspects of that I think are illegitimate, but these are the lines that they're going to use to go after Democrats. They dropped gas prices. Have you noticed that? They used to talk about gas prices all the time, but gas prices have steadily been going down. So, they kind of lost that as one of their main arguments. But I do think the core of what he's saying is actually true, that the right is going to have to, and Republicans are going to have to rely on economic attacks to go after Biden and seize on those and hope that the voters will prioritize the economic stuff over abortion. But look, abortion is one of those things where everybody felt like it was a settled issue, and now that Republicans have made it an issue again, there might be a backlash over that.
On crime, especially. So how do they fix that? He's trying to go back to his 1990s roots.
Right.
When you were at law school or just out, and he was he's talking about predators and everything. But how do you do that at the same time be this racial justice reform president?
So wait, you can't be in favor of racial justice, and argue like Biden does for more police on the streets? Look, that might not be a popular position among the left base, and it's not. But that is the lane Biden is taking. That is what he's doing. So in other words, he's saying, I want 100,000 more cops on the streets, but he also signed a George Floyd executive order where he created a registry of abusive cops. Now, he acts like that's contradictory. I don't think that's contradictory. And it's consistent with his entire career. So Kilmeade rightly points out, he's trying to be like 1990s Biden. What he misses is he's never not been 1990s Biden. I think he has gotten better economically now, and it might be because of the pressure and the current political era. But in terms of his views on crime, he hasn't changed at all.
That was talking about George Floyd and Black Lives Matter need to tear down cities, and that's a positive even during the coronavirus times.
You think Biden thinks it's a good thing when Black Lives Matter riot? He's consistently been anti-riot. He's given speeches where he's against rioting. So this is just a smug, flippant attack, and he probably knows it's untrue.
So he realizes it's going so poorly and crime is so out of control, and we can't get cops, and we don't pay them enough, and we don't prosecute criminals, so what do I do? Now, it's the Republicans who didn't take that money that I gave them in these Republican-run cities and put them towards building up the police force. And that's what he's saying right now. And then he's going to segue into guns and assault weapons.
No. What he said is Republicans are posturing like they're pro-law enforcement at the exact same time that some pro-Trump crank tried to shoot up an FBI building. At the same time that Trump is funding the January 6th convicts. Over 900 convictions, over 900 cases, I should say, that were brought up. Over 300 have pled guilty. We're talking about many who committed assault January 6th at the Capitol. So don't tell me you're pro-law enforcement if you also are in favor of, the assaults that happened against cops during January 6th, or the people who broke windows or broke down doors or bum rushed the Senate, stole stuff out of the Senate, whatever. Don't tell me you're, pro-law and order and pro-cop, and then you support those people, because that doesn't make sense. That's his argument. That is a sound argument. Because the reality is when the right says law and order, what they mean is like, let's over-police poor communities, right? Let's, like, what's it called? Broken windows policing. Like, go after even the tiny crimes, because that's how you keep the streets clean. So that is a legitimate criticism. When they say law and order, they don't actually mean, hey, apply that to us and to people on our side who do messed up stuff. He made that point. Kilmeade's trying to mangle that point and twist it like that's not what he was saying. Oh, he's done. Okay. Anyway, there you go. There's Brian Kilmeade. I do think that was quite an admission in there about, hey, abortion is really hurting Republicans. That's true. That's true. But by the way, Brian, what you're going to witness here is, you know what else is hurting Republicans? The fact that now Biden is doing the bare minimum, and it's paying off, and his numbers are going up. So in other words, passing the IRA, which was super weak, but it had a 15% corporate minimum tax rate in there. That's good. It had $64 billion more for Obamacare in there. That's good. It had some lower prescription drug prices in there. That's good. It has, tax credits for electric vehicles and subsidies to grow the green energy sector. That's good too. He will be rewarded for doing the bare minimum because we're so used to not even getting that. He's going to be rewarded for the bill that gave healthcare to toxic burn pit victims who are veterans. He's going to be rewarded for that. Sorry, he is. He's going to be rewarded for the $10,000 of student loan debt reduction, and in some cases more than that. He's going to be rewarded. So it's not just that, hey, Republicans are extreme on abortion. It's also that now the Democrats are doing the bare minimum. And when you compare and contrast that with a Republican Party that's marching right off the cliff and following Trump off that cliff, I mean, it couldn't be more clear. It's never been more clear in my lifetime, seeing the difference here, right? At the same time, all this other stuff's going on. You got Trump out there saying, install me as president again without an election, or at the very least, redo the election. I mean, there's a big difference there, right? So, part of the analysis is correct. The concession he makes is correct. A lot of the other stuff is standard Fox News garbage. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.